Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Masterclass, an open conversation for a better night's sleep. At OpenUp, we're on a mission to make mental well-being accessible to all, and through these monthly masterclasses, we aim to contribute to that. My name is Emma White. I am the host for today's masterclass, and I'm a psychologist at OpenUp. And from me, you're going to learn more about the mental aspect of stress, the impact of that on sleep, and how ultimately to deal with it. And I'll be doing this through personal examples and stories. But I'm thankfully not doing the conversation on my own. I'm in the studio joined by Aaron Spapens, who is a colleague, but also a dear friend of mine. Aaron, please share with us, what are we going to learn from you today?
Well, for me, I'm going to tell you mostly about the physical relationship between stress and sleep, and also about my own personal stories concerning sleep on a deeper dive.
On a deeper dive. Yeah. Great. Well, looking forward to that. So we're organizing this masterclass because unfortunately in the statistics we see that 1 in 4 of us is experiencing periods of bad sleep. And through this masterclass, we're really hoping to contribute to lowering these numbers because we, if I may speak for Aaron as well, we really wish everybody to have a good night's sleep. So for today's session, to get the most out of it, I recommend you having pen and paper at handy where you can make notes. And during the session, I'll also emphasize certain questions for reflection. So please note those down and you can reflect on them during the session or after the session if you want. At the end of the session, I think about 10-15 minutes at the end, we're going to have time for Q&A where we're going to answer questions coming in from you. You can ask the questions in the question tabs at the bottom of the right-hand screen, where you can also upvote the questions that you want answered. So they'll be appearing on my iPad, and then we know which ones to at least discuss during the Q&A. So Aaron, very excited to be here together with you.
Finally.
How did you sleep last night?
Well, actually, something reoccurring happened this evening, actually this night. It's something that happens every 2 to 3 months, and that's I get the hiccups during the night.
During the night,
during the night,
interesting.
I will wake up, and it's sometimes so intrusive that I actually go to the sofa and actually sleep there, and to leave my girlfriend sleeping a sound night's sleep. But well, last night it happened twice actually, but I could breathe it away a little bit, so I didn't have to sleep on the sofa. And actually, it was a quite good evening. Although I woke up twice, I was still rated a 4 out of 5. So feeling okay-ish. A little bit like normally I sleep 5 out of 5 most often, but it's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So not the best sleep, but still close.
Yeah, I expect it to be worse, actually.
Well, we're also very curious how everybody else has slept. So if you want to mention it in the chat, please let us know.
Yeah, and also the same question for you, Emma. How did you sleep?
So it also wasn't my best night's sleep, but also not my worst. I do tend to get a bit nervous for these kind of things in a studio with cameras and all these live viewers. But yeah, I do know myself that this does tend to happen every time I do something like this. So I kind of took precautionary measures in the past few days. I've taken it really easy. So I knew that when this happens, at least I'm resilient enough to deal with it.
And the adrenaline will help as well, right?
Yes, adrenaline will also help me get through the session as well. But Aaron, so you said that last night you slept okay-ish. But how has your relationship in general been with sleep?
Well, let me explain first, before we dive into what my personal relationship with sleep is. I think it's really important to know what sleep actually is.
To get everybody on the same page,
everyone
right?
on the same page. Yeah. So what is sleep in the first place? Now, actually sleep is essential for recovery.
Okay.
And if we don't sleep enough, actually it's harmful for us. On the one hand, sleep builds up the body. At the other hand, it removes toxins. So it's just essential. And then sleep consists of different kind of parts. We have non-REM and REM sleep. Rapid eye movement sleep, which is the stage where we dream and actually kind of relive our day in a certain way. Then we have the non-REM, which is kind of divided in 4 stages. But to make it more simplistic, it's superficial, so not that deep.
Like light sleep.
Very light sleep.
Yeah.
And deep sleep, so kind of hard to wake you up. And this is very important to know because deep sleep is essential to feel refreshed in the morning. So deep sleep is essential for recovery and refreshed feeling in the morning, but also the duration of your sleep. So most people get 7 to 9 hours of sleep, which is good for them. But the duration is not the only factor to have a good quality night's sleep. So many people overthink like I need to get 9 hours. And for some people, 6.5 might be enough as long as they have enough deep sleep. So those two deep sleep and time duration of sleep are very well kind of the pillars
Right.
of good quality sleep.
Yeah, so sleep in essence is recovery.
Yeah.
And in order to recover as well as possible during our sleep, there's an interplay with how long we're sleeping and how deep we're sleeping. And if I might add, and I'm also curious what your thoughts are about it, is I can imagine that your expectations of sleep also play a big role.
Definitely.
Like if I have an expectation that I need to sleep 8 hours a night to have a good night's rest, but then I suddenly get 7 of actually good quality sleep, even though I've had deep sleep and I've slept long enough, because I expected to sleep more, it does impact how I perceive how I have slept.
Yeah, there's the power of the brain.
The power of the brain.
Indeed, yeah, and it's actually correlated to stress in a certain way, right? So if you think you slept worse, you're probably stressing out, and therefore you feel kind of fatigued. And those more vague complaints that are kind of representative for stress in general. But it's also really good to discuss stress and sleep because there is this autonomic nervous system, and once again, to get everyone on the same page, like this is fairly basics, but maybe very important to cover. It's the autonomic nervous system consists of 2 branches. So we have the sympathetic nervous system on the one hand, which is the gas pedal. This is the activating nervous system. On the other hand, we have the parasympathetic nervous system, the brake pedal, the relaxation and recovery side of the nervous system. Now, those 2 things need to be in balance. And to know, it's very important to know that sleep is not just the 7 to 9 hours or 6 to 10 hours. It's the 24 hours.
So it's your whole day, it's your whole night.
Your 24 hours, the whole week, exactly. So it's actually beyond 24 hours. You are active and you have recovery. And that's not kind of solely confined to 24 hours. It's just a bit broader. So the 24 hours are really important. So you have activity during the day. And if you press the gas pedal all day long, and you suddenly want to go to bed and sleep, it's hard to expect your body to just wind down immediately.
But I think everybody can recognize this.
So it's about the balance. So you also practice recovery and relaxation throughout the day to actually get proper sleep. So we just have to think about the brake and the gas pedal. Use it wisely and not only just daytime gas pedal and now, nighttime brake pedal. That's not going to cut the chase. Definitely not.
Right. So when you're saying sleep is 24 hours, it's about those 24 hours or that 24-hour cycle. Everything that you do impacts how you sleep.
Exactly.
And it's key that there's a balance between how much gas you give, how much on you are and activity you have, and how much you recover. So press on the gas pedal.
Yeah.
And Aaron, you shared once with me also a personal example where this was totally out of balance with you. Would you mind sharing a little bit more about that for us?
Yeah. So when I was young, actually 6 years old of age, until my 12th, when I was 12, so primary school, right? I was having a tough time. Actually, I was bullied. That's definitely not healthy in a certain way. That's tough on the brain and the mental state, socially, emotionally, and eventually also physically, because I slept very bad. I had like night scares about dinosaurs eating me after, of course, but that was like a repetitive dream. I had kind of anxiety actually, so just child anxiety, not once scared, but just for a longer time. And also my parents got in a divorce when I was 10, and that took a longer time. So that came on top of that. And what I experienced was that I had so much trouble falling asleep and staying asleep that it actually impacted me also physically, because I was also at that time, especially around the age of 12, I was already competing in judo. So I felt like sometimes I was motorically a little bit more challenged because I was just so fatigued just by sleep deprivation. But I am also fortunate enough because I could complain, but also I had the opportunity to get like a therapist, and it was a holistic therapist that did mind-body exercises, but also it was also for sure talking therapy. His name was Gerard. I don't know his last name, but it was he was a practitioner, and he helped me with.
Thank you, Gerard.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Gerard. He helped me to land in my body. So we did mind-body exercises to kind of feel my body again. But also he gave me an exercise, which is like the 3-box system. I have discussed this once before with you, but most people are very curious when I say this. But the 3-box system is basically 3 different boxes. You kind of divide your thoughts.
So your worries.
Your worries, yeah. So before you fall asleep, most of the time, many people get thoughts, especially when they have like difficulties falling asleep. And when I was a kid, I had 3 boxes. Gerard told me, right? So we had one box, which is the good things. So the good things that happened, which you want to remember, which you want to celebrate
so
tomorrow.
Like positive thoughts.
Positive
then?
thoughts, yeah, right. Positive. Because your day, even though it's sometimes challenge, you have nice things to remember. So you take those along, and you just keep those in your pocket and just kind of remember like, hey, it was nice.
So the keep box.
The keep box. And then we had the throwaway box, the bin box, let's say.
The garbage.
The garbage, indeed. And that was like all the negative stuff, which you actually don't know what you do with it. So there was like, this happened, but I don't know what the solution is. But also I don't know if this is something I can adjust. So it's not in my control. Just put it away because you don't have any control. So throw it away. And then we have the third one. And that was like the personal development. That was, I want to grow box, basically. So personal development box. And that was, something happened. It was not nice, but I might actually do something about it to grow as a person. And one of the things I focused on was being more able to voice my emotions, because I was totally dissociated in a certain way, so I couldn't voice my emotions. So I wanted to start talking with Gerard about me. I am feeling this, and this is impacting that and that.
So not just I am thinking,
but also feeling.
But so actually by getting all those thoughts organized, you're creating space to access what you're feeling.
Exactly. Yeah, and it is I think it's a cognitive behavioral therapy kind of in a certain way, but on a child's level.
Yeah.
But I could develop over time. I could, because of the organization and the kind of I had just the clarity to focus on developing myself. And it was really great. And this actually I did years on end. And now it's kind of automated. I don't even think about it, but it
just
happens.
happens.
And sometimes I wake up with an epiphany, like, hey, this is what I wanted to focus on. So this is what helped me to tackle my challenge. Definitely, it's something you can use maybe yourself, but sometimes it doesn't work for some people. But
it's
this
very personal.
Is personal for me. And I want to stress one thing, because I didn't discuss it before. It's like stress. Like this stress, it definitely had an emotional and physical impact, and also socially. But in a certain way, stress is always good. I want to convey this. Stress is always good as long as you can recover. As a child, I wasn't able to recover first. And after this like mind-body exercises and also like this kind of 3 boxes idea, I could organize and I could start to recover more and therefore get out of the situation. So it helped me to kind of be more resilient. Yeah.
And I can also imagine, because when you say stress is always good and linking to what you were experiencing with being bullied and going through, your parents going through a divorce, I can imagine that people are like, oh, but how can that be good stress? But in a way, the way I would look at it is, at the end of the day, your body is just telling you something, that you need something, that something needs to change. And when you're going through something like that, that's really painful, your body is actually just screaming, help, something needs to change, or I need to work through this, or I'm feeling something that needs space. So in a way, it is good that you were feeling all those things, because that led you to find a way to deal with it in more of a constructive way.
Yeah. Definitely. You just pulled the words out of my mouth.
And the bin method, I'm just going to call it the bin or the box method.
Yeah.
How did you do that? Do you just write it down? Do you just do it in your head? I'm just trying to make it concrete for everybody who's listening as well.
Yeah, so for me, actually, I didn't write it down.
Okay.
It was not part of the exercise as Gerard intended it to be, but it's kind of nice. He just said, like, think about it and just divide it in the bins. And if a thought kind of reemerges, do it again. And it wasn't about like writing it down, but I can imagine that if you have recurring thoughts, especially when you are more like, if we're adults, we might actually write it down. And it's also a way of just putting it aside. So maybe as a nice addition, I would recommend to write it down. Yeah.
Maybe start with that.
But yeah, so that's my personal story. But I do know that you had a tough period yourself 1 year ago. And so I want to give you the opportunity to also discuss that. Like, how was your relationship with sleep and back then and now?
So the reason I'm going to be telling this is because I also recognize a lot of my own experience in my clients. So I'm hoping that whatever I'm sharing is something you could maybe relate to and take things out for yourself. But yeah, you're right. A year ago, I had a tough time with regards to sleep, even though my relationship now I think is pretty good with sleep. A year ago, it was not. Different things were going on in my life. I had really bad eczema flare-up. So those who don't know what eczema is, it's a skin condition. And it was very visible on my face and on my arms. And I was just so afraid that if I wouldn't sleep, it would just get worse. Mm-hmm. So that was going on, was giving me stress. Then me and my partner were also looking at a house, which is really fun, really exciting, and also stressful. And a lot of changes were going on at work. And I wasn't taking that on very well either. So it was stress. Mm-hmm. And that led to me really struggling to get to sleep in the evening. Like, my mind was just racing all over the place. I just felt this anxiety like everywhere. And then if I did get to sleep, I would wake up an hour later and I'd just go through the whole cycle again. So every morning I was waking up like, I think I'm only sleeping like 2 or 3 hours a night. And this went on for quite a few weeks. Until that point, so until a year ago, I was very proud in calling myself a retired perfectionist.
I know.
Yeah, and what do I mean with a retired perfectionist? What I mean with it is that I used to be a perfectionist in the sense that I always wanted to do the best I could. It was never good enough. Everything had to be perfect. And of course, behind it was this immense fear of failing or not being good enough. So always having to do well to still feel good enough. And I got help for that because it really impacted me. So I also went through therapy and I was super proud of all the steps that I'd taken. So that's why I call myself a retired perfectionist, because I thought it didn't impact me anymore and that I was fine with things being good enough until this period of not sleeping well. And in hindsight, you can just see all these old patterns crawling back in again. And before you knew it, I was determined to have the most perfect evening routine, because only then was I going to be able to get a good night's sleep. Yeah. And where it maybe started with 1 or 2 things that could be helpful, like dimming the lights or putting my phone away, it quite quickly became very extensive, 8 to 9 steps, had to go through all of them before I could go to sleep. And if something didn't go right, had to do it all over again. And this became very complicated. And being a true perfectionist, I was also super hard on myself, saying things to myself like, oh, you're a failure, you can't sleep, even that you can't do, you're a psychologist, you should know. Yeah, I was not very kind to myself. Yeah. And when I was at the
I know where this is heading. Like,
you know what's coming.
I know. Like I know you had a talk with your mum, right?
Yes. So at the highest point of my anxiety, I was on the phone with my mum. Mom, I don't get what I'm doing wrong. Why isn't this working? I still can't sleep. And my mom, very honest, she said, Emma, you're turning into a control freak. Gadoom. You can imagine that was not a nice rest of our conversation. I was angry. I was frustrated. How dare she say that I'm not doing it, that I'm being a control freak, because I was trying so hard. Yeah. And that was the issue. I was trying too hard. And even though it was really painful to hear this from my mom, it was exactly what I needed to hear to realize that because I was not feeling in control of my skin, I wasn't feeling in control of finding a house, I did not feel control at work, I was just trying to control the one thing I thought I could control, and that was my mind, that was my body, that was me. Yeah. And I was basically just adding layer and layer of I have to, I must, pressure on a body and a mind that was understandably already very stressed. And this helped me to take a step back and think, okay, instead of adding 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 things to my routine, what can I start letting go of? Yeah. And really looking at those 24 hours, what are the behaviors that are helping me, the thoughts that are helping me that I want to focus more on, what are the things that are not helping me that I can let go or actively change. And there's one thing that I think I also shared with you that really helped me in doing this. So this was not an overnight thing. It, of course, took time.
Yeah.
But in the evenings, and I actually did it last night when I was feeling a bit stressed about today, when I feel these anxious thoughts or feelings come up, I will basically just put a hand on my, no, it's fine. I'll put a hand on my chest and a hand on my belly. I'll close my eyes and I'll go to whatever I'm thinking or feeling. So whether it's anxiety, whether I'm worried, whether I'm frustrated or I'm angry, what do I notice in my body? What do I feel? Where do I feel it?
Yeah.
And just breathing through it. So instead of trying to control it, just going to it. It's giving it space. Like I was saying to you, it's just there to tell you something.
Yeah.
So go to it. And instead of adding things to my routines, I must, I have to, I really changed my tone to, it's okay, whatever I'm feeling, it's allowed to be here. And just comforting myself in a way. You're not the only one. You're going through stress. It is stressful. It's okay. It will pass. Just kind of comforting myself and allowing it to be there. And then breathing through it for a few breaths again. And just slowly I could just notice it changing. And when it starts changing, I start noticing, okay, and you can ask this to yourself, what do I need right now? Maybe I just need to shed a tear. Maybe I need to give myself a hug. Maybe I want a hug from my partner. Maybe this was enough.
Yeah.
But just this, I mean, you probably notice it's a complete change in how you approach what you're going through, whether it's strict, whether it's harsh, and it's I have to and control, versus it's just allowed to be here and I'm being kind and kind of compassionate to myself.
Yeah. Which is kind of weird as I'm sitting here listening to your story, that in the beginning about like all the kind of cramped and controlled, I actually started breathing faster and feeling more kind of, and then when you said like, all right, and just start slow and just like be more compassionate with yourself, being more kind, self-love in a certain way. That kind of was like the result. Like it felt getting back into my own body as well. Like I was so it's about like being more maybe compassionate about yourself.
It's about, changing the tone towards yourself, understanding when those steps that you think are helpful are actually maybe getting in the way, and listening, exactly what you were saying, that your body is stressed, so it needs something. So instead of trying to control it, just letting it be there, and there's different things that you can do, like what I've just shared, to just go through the feeling instead of trying to suppress it or actively change it.
So there's kind of a similarity between my story and your stories about like
in a
my
way
body in a certain way.
Yeah.
I had like this exercise, which is kind of already a bit more towards the cognitive behavioral therapy with the bins in a certain way. Do you have also like other tricks up your sleeve that kind of help with better night's sleep or letting go, for example? Yeah,
so I'm very aware that probably a lot of you listening, a lot of people I speak to, we're always looking for that quick fix, right? That one thing that's going to transform our sleep. I'm really sorry to disappoint you, but often it is not a quick fix. And of course, there are things that you can do, whether it's related to your daily routine or before your routine going to bed, that could to some degree help. So I also want to avoid just mentioning all the things that you can find on blogs or in other YouTube channels. But there are a few things that I noticed that do really work with the clients that I've been working with regards to sleep. So it always does start with tracking those 24 hours over a longer period of time. What is helping me? What is not? How is it impacting my sleep? So that's going to give us red threads and insights about what do we have to work with. If we're thinking about thoughts, worrying thoughts, of course, the method that I was using could be helpful, but also actively challenging the thoughts that are not helping you. So if I'm having thoughts like, what if I'm never going to fall asleep again? What if I'm going to be so tired tomorrow that I'm not going to be able to do this masterclass because I'm just so exhausted? And what if? If I'm having these thoughts, just to note them down, right, this is a thought that's obviously not helping me. And how can I challenge it? So what is the worst that can happen? Is it really that bad? Has it ever been this bad? Is it true that you're never going to fall asleep again? And just kindly confronting it and seeing if you have any proof or evidence against it. So that's a technique that often can help. Another thing that I personally like to use is also making actively space for positive experiences about
Right.
sleep. There have been nights that we have slept well, or we slept blissfully. How that just amazing nap. How was that? How did it feel? How can you get excited and look forward to sleeping again? And just exploring what is a good night's sleep for you and how has that been can also help you refocus your attention to making sleep something that's nice, because at the end of the day, our bodies are made to sleep.
True that.
And if we can have that deep trust that our body knows how to sleep and we just need to explore what is blocking it, that is really helpful. And from that trust also comes that positive experience of sleep. So I think for now, those are the most important things that I've at least seen the biggest difference in.
So one that's like before the extended version of advice is like mind body. So what do I feel? Challenge like the not so useful thoughts. Be more positive or train positivity. Like
make space for it, right?
Space,
so when you've challenged those negative thoughts, they'll become less there. And then there's suddenly space, right? What can we add in there? What positive experiences, helpful, positive thoughts can we shift our attention to? These negative thoughts, they've become automatic, but we've learned them. And we can also learn positive. And it does not happen overnight, but it can happen.
So what I do with my girlfriend, for example, going to bed and lay down and actually smile, because it's also like it's so
because it's time to go to sleep.
It's time to go to sleep. For us, it's kind of like this sleeping party in a certain way. Like I don't know, it feels good every single time. Like we I don't know, it's just an automatic reaction. But I start to smile when I'm hitting my pillow. And she does as well. I actually learned it from her, which is kind of weird. She smiled every single time, and I took it as my thing now. But so that's more positivity. And at the last was just know that your body is able to sleep.
Trust it.
Yeah, right.
And Aaron, what do you still have to add with regards to sleep? Maybe more from a physical perspective, and what can help? Maybe we can shortly still go through that.
Yeah. So back in the days, you might still argue that I'm still an athlete in a certain way. I train tremendous a lot. Yeah, we're all athletes. But back in the days, I was doing judo and also eventually rowing. But it's being an athlete that's also living in extremes in a certain way. You're stressing your body so hard that it needs a tremendous amount of recovery. And for most people, you're thinking like, where does this story go to? It's HRV, it's heart rate variability. Because as an athlete, you train so hard that you actually don't feel straight away that you're overtraining. And it's like this stress, like normal stress actually, it's there, but you don't feel it like an acute stress. It's just slowly chipping away like performance, sneaking into your life. So eventually my performances weren't improving. Actually, they didn't go very like they didn't get a setback, but they were stagnating in a certain way. They didn't improve anymore. I was training hard, like ridiculously hard. And the first thing I noticed actually was that I couldn't focus that well anymore. I wasn't able to focus. I was more agitated. I was emotionally a little less stable. And that was for me, like, where does this come from? I did some physical examinations with a movement scientist, and he said, like, I see your VO2 max is actually not improving. Actually, it's going back. But your power, that's a measurement of how much you can do, like as a physical performance.
So it was proof that you're,
And he said, like, you need to track your HRV. And I was like, what is that? Yeah, exactly. What is HRV? HRV, heart rate variability. Heart rate variability. I'm going to explain this by asking you to do this along with me. Okay. You, Emma, as well. Everyone to get away like from the pencils and paper. But get your fingers, like lay them in your neck.
2 fingers?
2 fingers or a whole hand. Doesn't really matter. But feel your pulse.
Okay, so you find your artery?
First, everyone, try to feel your pulse.
Oh yeah, found it.
All right, so when you have found your pulse, now start to breathe in and out. Doesn't matter how, just in and out slowly. And feel what happens to your heartbeat. If you have the answer, please type it in the chat.
Okay, I notice with breathing in that it's speeding up. And then breathing out, it kind of slows down. Is that normal? Yeah.
Applaud. Nice. It's really well. This is the answer indeed.
Okay.
Is inspiration is active in a certain way. So you tense muscles to breathe in.
Yeah.
So it's activity. So once again, it's the gas pedal.
Right. Breathing in is gas pedal, and breathing out is
brake pedal. So it's the gas pedal, brake pedal story. And now to explain, your heart is never like a metronome. It doesn't tick like every single second. It has a variability. So it slows down, it goes faster. But actually this variability is very intriguing, because if it's super flexible, think of you being very relaxed, you're probably more flexible. Whatever life throws at you, you're more capable and resilient to deal with it. So now if you're more flexible, if your heart is more flexible, if you have a high variability in your heart rate, you're more flexible, you can kind of cope with stress better. Now, if you have a low heart rate variability, so your heart is becoming like a metronome slowly, it's really steady every single second, you're like this, well, relating to the story, again, from like the control freak. Now, if you're very stressed, this is what happens. You want to control every
so I have low heart, and I was pressing on the gas pedal.
Exactly.
On a body that was already stressed.
Yeah, so that's heart rate variability. So heart rate variability, you want to increase your heart rate variability to know that your nervous system is actually good. So you can kind of measure this days on end, months on end, and kind of track. And what this implicated for me specifically was that I tracked my heart rate variability. I went back to the movement scientist, and he said, like, all right, train less hard. I was like,
that's
damn.
hard for an athlete to hear.
Yeah, I was like, no, we're not gonna do this. I'm just gonna train, and I will just train more if I need to. Well, he said, like, no, trust me, do less.
Brake pedal.
Indeed. I hit my brake pedal more often. I took the training load off, and actually I started to improve tremendously. My kind of gas pedal and my brake pedal were kind of calibrated again. They were synchronized.
Yeah, bringing it in
kind
balance.
of a synergy. They had a balance. So I actually, with less training, I started already to improve. When I was really recovered, I started to kind of increase my training load again, and then I took off. So actually, it is just insane that just your body keeps count in a certain way.
Body keeps a score.
It keeps definitely a score. So if you're stressed, don't load yourself with more stress.
Stress is a sign that you need recovery.
Stress
if you feel too stressed, you need a break.
So stress is always good as long as you have enough recovery. But yeah, I feel the question coming.
Come on. Sorry, I have to ask. Yeah. So HRV, I get the concept. Yeah. In a way, it's still quite complicated, and not all of us have the ability to measure HIV. So how important is this, or are there other ways that you can get insight into this?
I think it's really important to know the concept.
Okay.
It's not important to actually measure it. For some people, like athletes and high-performing individuals, like crazy-going people, like, yeah, sure, you can measure HRV, but it's not mandatory. It's definitely not necessary. But you need to know the concept and think about a few questions I'm going to ask you now. If you feel...
to write them down.
If you feel very refreshed in the morning after waking up, if you have enough energy to go throughout your working day and still have energy left to do things you love, and then still be relaxed enough to allow proper sleep, if you say yes to every question, then I know you have a good HRV.
Yeah.
But if you say like, no, I don't have enough energy, I could say you might have hit the gas pedal too much.
And then we need to go back to the 24 hours and understand when are you pressing the gas pedal, when are you on the brakes, and how is that impacting your sleep? And then we can go through the whole cycle again. But I get now why it's important to understand the concept and how it can impact you when you have more insight into this.
Yeah, and actually mind-body exercises, breathing exercises, just before bed. If you're stressed and you will measure your HRV and it's low, try to do a mind-body exercise, slow breathing. You will see that your HRV is increasing. And that's also a true kind of measurement that tells you like, hey, my body is now allowing me to sleep. Yeah. So you don't need to measure it, but you can actually feel. And this interoception. So feel your body.
Feeling.
Feeling, yeah.
Aaron, thank you so much for sharing this really insightful
thank you so much.
information. And it's really cool to, in a way, in our stories, really feel and understand the interplay between the mental and the physical. And of course, it isn't separate. You know, we're acting like you have the physical and I have the mental, but we're talking about the same things and they all impact each other. So I think that's really interesting that we're able to, you know, bring that alive in our stories and to the audience. Before we go to the Q&A, because I'm really curious to also hear all the questions from everybody, I still have a few questions for you. And these are just some reflection questions, as I mentioned before, that you can either explore now or after the session. So after having heard everything that we've talked about today and probably other research that you may have done regarding sleep, what do you think the reason is that you are not sleeping well? And having a think about that and exploring it in mind with everything that we've talked about. And then, if you feel that in this conversation, nothing that you've heard is new, that you've heard all of this before, you already know about this, then I'd like to invite you to ask the question, well, how come you're not doing it then yet? Because often we know very well that all the things what we can do to be able to sleep better, but often we don't do it. So try and explore that and ask yourself, are you allowing yourself? Do you wish for yourself to have a good night's sleep? Or is there something there that's chewing at it that you're not allowing yourself to sleep?
Of course, there's one reason why you are definitely allowed to not have a good night's sleep, and that's having a young child, for example. That's part of life. I know this is one of the things I hear often, like becoming a new dad or new, like, mom. So that was weird. That actually, yeah, sure, that's part of the deal. But I think it's really important to say, like, all right, what can I still do to have?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think what we've been talking about, the tone that you have to yourself, whether you're relating with compassion or with strictness and being harsh to yourself, but also looking at where can I still press on the brakes a bit more, can be a big impact there. Yeah. So I hope you've written down these questions, and if you want, you can of course always explore it with either Aaron, me, or any of the other experts if you're finding these challenging questions to answer. But I think they are a good way to continue what we've discussed today. I don't know about you, Aaron, but I'm very curious to hear all the questions that have come in from you. I'm going to try and answer as many as I can. The first question that we have is from Philip. And Philip says, is it more important to get more sleep in number of hours or to wake up at the same time every day?
Oh, this is super nice question. I really love
Take it away, Aaron.
Philip, that's a really good question. Actually, if someone is challenged in sleeping, we actually say stick to a routine. Stick with going to bed at the same time, and definitely definitely wake up at the same time every single time.
So that's more important.
More important. Because if you're getting super fatigued, sleep deprived, eventually you will fall asleep. Your body knows how to sleep.
Exactly. We trust our body knows how to sleep.
And your body will, if you give it structure, will go to deep sleep. Because in the beginning of your sleep cycle, so if you have 9 hours, the first 4.5 hours to 5 hours, you will have more deep sleep. So it prioritizes deep sleep.
Right.
So even if you have a shorter period, but you have good depth, you actually optimize the kind of recovery period. So it's actually, and if I have to read the question again in a certain way, but it's stick to routine. Try to not get social jet lag, for example, which maybe is one of the other questions. But if you drink in Friday evening, make it late, go out late, and then you have this kind of delay sleep onset, and that will kind of desynchronize your rhythm, and that's actually worse. So try to stick with the schedule throughout the whole week. Yeah. Throughout the whole year, maybe years. Of course, you need to enjoy life as well. So sometimes you can, but it's about routine.
So if I would go out on a Friday night and I'd get to bed late, then I'd still be advised to wake up at the same time the next day, and the next evening, go to bed at the time that I would usually go to bed. So that way you just kind of push yourself into that routine. And I think we can also assume that, if the rest of the week you have slept well or have been sticking into that routine, your body can take that blow of maybe not having one night of not sleeping very well. Great question, Philip. Thanks for asking that. We have more questions coming in. The next one is from Lydia. When I try to sleep, my mind becomes active with thoughts. How can I stop thinking about things and fall asleep more peacefully? Well, I can take this one. So often we see, and this also links to the 24 hours that we've been talking about. And I don't know if this is specific for you, Lydia, but if I would assume that you're having all these thoughts in the evening, it can have to do with that throughout the day you're not recovering enough and you're not allowing yourself to offload everything that you've gone through. It's an element of processing, right? Processing what you're feeling, processing what you're thinking. So for example, if I had a stressful meeting or after this webinar, I'm not going to go straight back to my laptop. I'm going to go for a walk for half an hour with no phone calls, no podcast, just to allow myself to recover for what I've been through. But if I wouldn't do that and I just keep going through the day and then I'll have an exercise class, and in the evening my brain is going to be so on and I won't be able to allow myself to go to sleep again. So that's the first thing that I would look at. And then, of course, there's always ways to also offload before you go to sleep, whether it's just writing everything down before you go to sleep, whether it's doing the exercise that I talked about, just going through your feelings, whether it's talking to your partner or your roommate or pets or parents about what you've been through, just allowing whatever is here to give it some space. Because if you're overthinking or you suddenly feel like you're becoming very active, it's a sign that it hasn't had enough space earlier in the day.
Totally agree, by the way. And one of the things I hear sometimes with clients is that when I tell them to do more mindful of breathing exercise before bed, they actually say like, hey, this worsens the whole ordeal. I just get so much space that thoughts run in. Then I sometimes actually advise people to do it a few hours before going to bed. And then have a distinct kind of relaxation moment where you let your thoughts come in. And then separate that from your sleep. Sometimes they say like, hey, now actually I'm unwind already and I can go to bed more peacefully instead of kind of combining it together.
Yeah, like for example, a very effective technique is what we call the worry quarter. So maybe at the end of the day, if work is the thing that's stressing you out the most, just to have 15 minutes with your notebook, or maybe I used to send voice memos to myself, but just letting everything out for 15 minutes, no breaks, go, 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 go. And then after 15 minutes, putting away my phone, closing my notebook, literally putting it away, going into a different space, and then allowing myself to go into my evening or rest of my day. So that's also something that could help. We have more questions. Anya asks, what do you think about revenge, bedtime, procrastination phenomena? And I see what this means. Revenge, bedtime, procrastination occurs when individuals sacrifice sleep for personal time. Any tips on how to get out from this bad habit? Okay, so if I understand correctly, you feel that you still need personal time during your day, and the only time that you find time for that is instead of sleeping. So whether that's a good thing or maybe how to deal with it. That's how I'm understanding the question. Aaron, do you have any thoughts about this one?
Yeah, so I've got the Dutch terminology for this, like draagkracht and draaglast.
Oh yeah, so it's about how much is on your plate, and how much can you carry.
Yeah, so the thing is, how much is on your plate in this sense? Like if you have so much to do during the day that you have to unwind and give yourself personal space when you need to actually sleep. Yeah. Can you cut down on all the other things you must do? Most of the time we think I need to do this.
But do we really have to do all these things?
So we can just actually deload the plate we're carrying. That is, I think, the most important step in this case.
And sometimes it really can feel like there's literally nothing that you can take off your plate. And I would still like to invite you, between everything that you're doing, just take 5 deep breaths. And even then, you're kind of getting from tension to... and already allowing yourself to press on that brake button. We can always find 5 deep breaths when you're setting a cup of coffee or getting a cup of tea, when you're on the toilet or when you're on your way to somewhere. And to see how doing that could maybe impact you, feeling that you have to sacrifice sleep for personal time.
Yeah. And most of the time, what I do see is that many people, especially many clients, and let's say adolescents, they
young
have
adults,
so young adults are they carry their phone everywhere. So much of their downtime actually they still spend with kind of a distraction.
And it's dopamine, right?
So
it's an addiction in a way.
It's in a certain way an addiction. So if we could turn our phones away more often, which I'm also guilty for, like, definitely,
100%.
definitely, I'm not like this saint. I'm always wearing my mobile phone with me, but I think if we could spend less time on our mobile phones, actually, this is also research lately that adults, like parents with newborns, they actually spend more time on their phones, and that also impacts their kids. So we're just spending so much time on
and
screens.
it's understandable, right? Because often we want to feel better, it gives distraction, but it's understandable because it's short term, it gives some form of relief. But we see on the long term, especially when we're tired and we're stressed, it just adds to the stress, and it's a blocker for being able to press on the brakes and have that recovery and the high HRV.
And sometimes it does feel like I can't get enough personal time, but actually, when you zoom out on the whole day, suddenly, like especially with clients and also myself, I'm also guilty on this part, right? I am scrolling too much on my phone. If I wouldn't do that and take a mindful break, I probably will have way more personal time as well. So this is also like a personal development goal for myself. And I would invite everyone to look at their daily phone usage, which is shockingly 6 hours or more sometimes. So 6 hours is a lot.
It is. So we have another question coming in from Anna. Anna says, if we are not a morning person, how to create a habit to go to bed earlier, apart from turning off phones, computers, etc. If you go to bed earlier but just don't fall asleep and then on the next morning tired. So I think we have to honor our own biological clock. Some of us are more evening persons than others. Some are more morning persons than others. And it's very unfortunate that often school and work and uni is all organized in a way that we need to be up early, etc. So I don't think it's necessarily a problem that you find it difficult to go to bed earlier if you notice that that's when you have the most energy. If it is possible, I would like to invite you to explore how could you organize your day in a different way so that you can make most use of the energy that you have and when you have it. So if you're more creative and you have more things done, well, maybe that means going to work later, but then at the end of the day, still doing other work that you would have otherwise done in the morning. Now, I do feel that employers are becoming more and more open to this because at the end of the day, it's about the value that you add, right, to a company, not necessarily the hours that you work. At least that's my opinion. And I think, thankfully, now we're talking more about mental health, it is becoming more accepted. But even if it's, some things that you'd like to do in the morning that you could maybe move to the evening and explore it in that way, because I don't think you should force something if it's just not your rhythm. But I'm also curious to hear how you see that, Aaron.
Well, I agree. We have differences. People that sleep later or earlier, that's kind of also the debate if it's also genetically. I'm not a genetic expert on sleep specifically. But what I do, also with the schedule thing, like if someone is so sleep deprived, the schedule thing, getting the routine done. If you want to shift cycles, like literally your circadian rhythm, like the 24 hours you live in of awake and asleep, you can shift that. But it needs consistency. So if you want to wake up earlier, you go out of bed every single day earlier.
And then you can assume that you'll be more tired in the evening.
You will adapt.
So that's if there's really no chance of you changing anything in your day, then that would be plan B, basically. Yeah. So we have a last question that I would like to still focus our attention on. And it's from Philip. Maybe it's Philip again or a new Philip. What are the best sleep insight trackers and are they worth it? So I see Whoop, Oura Ring, Apple Watch. Aaron, I know nothing about this. You have answers for this.
This is the wearable section.
The wearable
As
section.
you see, I am a data-driven person. but I don't wear anything. So I do this with my breath. I have some breath exercises that I measure every single day to kind of know what my HRV is doing, like the maximum exhalation test, for example. Whoop is incredible. Brian Johnson, like the most measured guy in the world. It's the billionaire.
So you would recommend that one?
Whoop is very good, but the Oura Ring is very good as well. Apple Watch, actually every fitness tracker nowadays has a kind of way of to measure a sleep score, which is kind of a mixture of different measurements. So it's heart rate, for example, heart rate variability sometimes, not always, movement during sleep. So they're all measuring the same things. And kind of combining. So they all measure somehow the same things. Yeah. They have different algorithms. Some of them are way more expensive, so it's also about the budget. If you have a lot of money, I would say go for a Whoop or Oura Ring or Apple Watch. They are good, so but you have also like the budget thing. You can also go for a Fitbit, for example. Yeah, so depending on your budget, personal preference, there's different choices, but overall all of them measure the same thing and would be equally as good. So that was our... Equally as good. There are some discussions there. Okay. But definitely... But let's just leave it at that then. Because I do think it's important that we also round off the session, because I think we could go on for forever on this topic, because it is so incredibly interesting. But as a final reflection question, also very curious to hear from you, and you can drop it in the chat as well. What are you taking away from this masterclass? And do you have any ideas of how you're going to implement this or what you might need to do that? So you can write them down in your notepad, or you can answer them in the chat. Aaron, specifically for you, what are you taking away, in short, from this session? A realization that sleeping is a training, so you can get better at it. So it's like a habit, a skill. Every skill is trainable, so you can sleep better. And our body knows how to, so it's understanding what is getting in the way that can help you train back into sleeping well. It's a good insight, actually. I didn't think of that earlier. That's kind of crazy. Well, what I'm taking away from this session is just, again, how intrinsically everything is linked, and that we've both come here from different perspectives, but in the end, our takeaways are almost the same. So it just comes to show how important it is, I think, for us, for healthcare in general, to really look at health more from a holistic 360 perspective. So I'm really glad that we do that at OpenUp. So if you are more interested in learning about sleep or diving more into the topic, we have lots of different support available on our website, or you can book one-on-one sessions with either one of us or any of our other OpenUp colleagues. Just go to openup.com and then you can find the resources there. For now, Aaron, I really want to thank you for this really honest and open conversation. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you have at home as well, and that you'll have a good night's sleep, and that everything that we've discussed today will contribute to that. So thank you, and maybe see you in next time. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Emma. Bye.